Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back after a brilliant win in the Carabao Cup last night. Fulham defeating Birmingham 2-0, and we've got Ipswich this weekend, which we're going to be previewing. Here to talk it all through and the end of the transfer window, we have Skibby. How are we going, Skibby?
Yeah, it's all good. It's the exciting week. I mean, it's TK's favourite week, therefore it's my favourite week. So lots to talk about, lots to discuss, and a lot to come, hopefully.
Deal sheets galore this week. Fingers crossed. Dave, how are we going tonight, or this afternoon rather?
Yeah, really good. 2 wins in a row. I'm sure we'll get into last night's performance, but on paper, it's 2 wins in a row, and I'm delighted about that. And I'm looking forward to discussing it and discussing the weekend as well coming up.
Discussing hopefully 3 wins in a row. Fingers crossed. Before we get cracking, as always, we'll just talk about the Discord very quickly. Lots going in there, and it's the place you want to be as the transfer window shuts. Fulham fan news, very, very active in the Discord. Gives us all the inside knowledge. First news comes through the Discord at all times, so please do join up. You can find the link in our Twitter. We also have cravenpod.com. You'll be able to jump on there, find all the latest news. We just released our midweek moments, so please do jump on cravenpod.com and check it out. Let's get straight into it, guys. Last night, second round of the Carabao Cup, a competition we made the semi-finals in last year. Marco Silva interested in silverware this year, and this one obviously seems like a very good competition to target. How did we feel? Skibby, I'll throw to you first. 11 changes, fully rotated starting lineup. How did you feel about the lineup that Silva put out against a League One side?
I really liked it, and to be honest, I was happy as well because I predicted it, all 11 players, so I was bang on the money, which I was very happy with. So it means I've got some kind of thinking which is aligned with Marco, which is probably one of the biggest flattery I can think of myself, to be honest. But no, I think when was the last time we made 11 changes to, our Premier League starting 11, and it actually was probably still a Premier League sort of rated team. Like, Reed, Kearney coming in, who were our starters 2 seasons ago. I mean, they're making impacts off the bench now. Castagna being second fiddle to Tete at the moment. Sessegnon coming in. We got the 2 new centre-backs, fair enough. Anderson will probably be a starter, but Cuenca was very, very good. Raul, Stansfield, Wilson. I mean, that was a very stacked team. And I think it really shows how Silva has built a very, very competitive squad. And, it's refreshing. Because before, whenever I think about, cup changes, we were bringing in Eslad Zveratic, at right back, and players of that calibre, and you just think, oh, Jesus Christ, like, we're going to lose to, I think we lost to, like, Lincoln City and things like that in the second round, and it just always was a nightmare. But it just seems to be, under Marco, even though we are resting players, which is a great thing, we are still putting out a squad who can go out and do a job. And I think that's exactly what we saw yesterday. And that was really something which was kind of exciting to think about. I mean, we think about the stars, but now we're actually thinking about the squad as a whole is actually taking shape to be a sort of a top 10 Premier League team.
Yeah, it's something we've talked about. I think we talked about on the last podcast, actually, the fact that the squad depth is starting to get to a level that you'd expect from like an upper mid-table team, where you can put out a second 11 that will probably do a job for you in the Premier League. I mean, realistically, Fulham's second 11 at the moment is probably, fighting relegation in the Premier League, but that is kind of okay. Like, you want your first 11 to be strong and to be able to challenge and push for Europe on a good season, and you want your backup players to be able to fill those gaps more than anything. We're never going to be one of those top 8 sides that are able to put so much talent on their bench and not worry about injuries and rotation because of that. We have to be smart about the way we do things. And look, we're also fortunate that there's some really talented youth coming through. Dave, good to see Stansfield get a start, and good to see an appearance from Josh King as well.
It was, nice to see Stansfield get a start off the left. And he, I think he really took his chance. He was one of the bright sparks of the evening. And you're right, Josh King came off the bench and showed what he's all about. Fantastic footballer. It's really exciting to have him, to see him. I think he probably does need to strengthen up over the next couple of years to really kind of cement a place in the first team squad more frequently. But what a talent! And both of them kind of took their chance last night. So really pleased with that.
Skibby, you've been a big advocate for Cuenca, who started in defence. Do you feel like having two ball-playing defenders, Cuenca and Anderson, both potentially starting in the Premier League, once they're up to speed, obviously, could be something that Marco will explore, having seen how well they played last night?
For sure. I think he just gives us that extra piece of composure. And I mean, from what I've seen from him, I mean, yes, it was call it a championship level squad from Birmingham City with I think it was Alfie May and Anderson up top. They gave us a runaround, and I think that really did test Cuenca, introducing to sort of the physicality of English football. He was a bit, I would say, off the pace a little bit. Just there was a few moments where I think Alfie May got a toe on the ball and he would leave a foot in and cause a foul. But I mean, what fantastic options to have, because we know that Marco loves to build up from the back, and we've spoken to Kish at Cottage Tactico, where he shows us in very dumbed down details of how Fulham like to play down a certain flank, and more often than not it's really forced down sort of the left side, but we try and push the ball starting on the right and then use the midfield to then bring the left side into play, whether it be Willian or Robinson. But from what I saw from Cuenca, or I have been seeing from Cuenca, I think it's a fantastic option that we've got, where he's definitely showing signs of being a Ream 2.0, very composed on the ball, very happy to have the ball at his feet. And for me, the way that I've been thinking is it's great to have that in your arsenal, that you're not fully going to rely on Anderson to sort of bring others into play and to start that attack. But how great is it that we can shift the ball from either side and not have to worry about, okay, well, I've got the ball, say, on the left-hand side with Robinson and Bassey, but, in order to get this attack going, I really need to get it to Anderson. So, this will be a lot of sort of moving and bringing Leno into the play. But how great would it be just to have two centre-backs to sort of say, right, if either of our centre-backs have got the ball, we're a go. And I think that would be great to have in a team if we're playing against opposition who have a really high press. We saw against Man United, yes, we had two centre-backs that didn't like the ball at their feet with Bassey and Diop, but Man United were relentless, causing mistakes, which then, could lead to goal-scoring opportunities for the opposition. But for me, for having potentially Cuenca and Anderson, say, against a Klopp's Liverpool, I know Klopp's not there anymore, but just hypothetical, stay with me. But how great would it be to have those sort of players who can break the lines, get the ball out early and find sort of Smith Rowe and Pereira breaking forward and unleashing a counter-attack? I think that is a very interesting and a big headache that Marco has going forward, and potentially something that we could potentially see this season.
Yeah, definitely. I think, seeing them perform at that level, admittedly against, like you say, a championship squad, but there's the potential there. It's their first starts, both of them competitively for Fulham. So there's still a long way to go. And we know that Marco does like to take his time to bed players in, have them understand the system a bit more fully. But I agree. I think later in the season, we could see a lot more rotation across that back line. And we've been used to having a fairly steady back line. Last season, we saw a lot of Tosin and Bassey together. Diop came in fairly regularly after some injuries, but it felt a little bit more stable. I think we're likely to see some rotation now that we've got the quality across that back line. And speaking of rotation, Dave, I'll throw to you on this one. Castagna started at right back and actually had a very good game. Do you think that puts a lot more pressure on Kenny Tete, who's holding down that spot in the Premier League at the moment?
Well, you're right. He did have a good game. And I'm sure we'll get on to some other performances in the team. And I think it's always difficult, actually, when you make 11 changes, a team that doesn't play together regularly, they lack cohesion, they're not used to, the tactics are all brand new to them. So it's very hard to shine in that kind of environment. And you tend to see even good players have bad games just because they're not used to the surroundings. But the ones who shone were certainly, I'd say Anderson really shone. And Castagna was definitely another one of those who shone last night. He had a really strong game down the right, so much so that Birmingham decided not really to try and attack down that side at all after, and focus very much on the other side. And yeah, look, we know what Castagna's all about. We know that he's a solid, dependable right back, and he's breathing down Kenny Tete's neck for sure. Kenny's been brought in at the start of the season. I think it's to help Adama and cover maybe for some of Adama's failings at defending, and it seems to be working quite well. So I think I'm expecting that to continue in the short term. But we know that we've got a fantastic option if we need it.
Sticking with you as well, Dave, other performances that you want to particularly mention, are there any that stand out for you?
In a positive way, yeah, I think
either a positive or a negative. Feel free.
Well, as I said, everything has to be with the caveat that this was a whole new 11 and the team aren't used to playing together. Yeah. And as I said, good players can look bad in that situation. So, if you make 3 or 4 changes, then you're likely to see like a good level of performance from everyone and, players step up. But with that many, it's really back to the drawing board for the side. So I think the people that shone for me was certainly Joachim Andersen's at the back. He just looked fantastic, and I would not even be surprised to see him come in on Saturday. I think Castagna we mentioned. I think that Cuenca had a good game alongside Anderson, and then further forward, Stansfield really took his opportunity. I think. Other than that, I'm really struggling. I think that there was a lot of players like that didn't take their chance. The players that would stand out for me are Raul Jimenez. I know he scored a penalty, and my goodness, he's got to be one of the best penalty takers around. But other than that, I thought his energy levels are really poor, and his work ethic really poor. He really didn't put any pressure on Muniz for me last night. He was very lackluster in his play, and his little flicks that he was trying just weren't coming off. And if they don't come off, he really looks like a bit of a passenger in the side. Kearney had a really bad game, especially that first half. He just gave the ball away, and he just didn't seem aware of what was going on around him. It was really surprising, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt because of the amount of changes. Reed looked like a bit of a headless chicken out there. And Harry Wilson again didn't really step up to the challenge. But the big concern for me out of it all is really unfortunately at left back, where I thought Sessegnon, I have some real concerns there. And I appreciate its first game in about 18 months. And, he's coming into a team with all new teammates. But I just was a little bit concerned that he didn't seem to have a lot of awareness about what was going on around him, where the wingers were, where the fullback was, and looked a bit weak in the challenge, both aerially and on the ground. And I just think that at the moment, he's got a long way to go before he's ready for the Premier League, in my opinion.
Skibby, agree with that? I know there's been a lot of chat on Twitter this morning and last night that Sessegnon isn't a left back and therefore shouldn't be playing at left back. But do you think he's got the potential to at least be a fill-in at left back for us?
I think he's definitely got enough about him that he can do a job if we need him to. But when I say that, I mean that in a comparison of Bobby Decordova Reed playing right back. Like, you wouldn't start him there. He doesn't look comfortable, but he'll do a job, and I think that's all we can really take from Sess. I mean, we've all said that we would love to see him further forward, but I just don't see Marco using him in that way. I haven't seen any kind of inkling that he could even use him in that way going forward. The pre-season games, the cup against Birmingham, that's the opportunities of where you can try him out in these positions. And every time we've seen him is at left back. So he's definitely been brought in to play a left back. I think he's better as a left wing back in a 5, because then he's always got someone kind of behind him to sort of get him out of trouble. But he is pretty good going forward. So, a back 4 is always going to be a struggle for him, and I just can't. Yeah, I'm with Dave. I have the doubts, but I think hopefully Robinson stays fit and we don't need to depend on him too much.
Yeah,
true. And look, we do have other options at left back as well. Cuenca can play left back. Bassi can play left back. I'd probably quite happily have Castagna play left back as well. I think he might have done last season at one point. So it's not like we're short.
Belgium as well.
I think so. Yeah, it's not like we're short on options at left back, and maybe it's the sort of De Cordova-Reid style versatility that Silva is looking at with someone like Sessegnon, where he does have the ability to play further upfield, and maybe it just gives us another option as a winger. But I do wonder if we're looking at signing another winger, all of a sudden we've got quite a number of players who can play out wide, and it's going to limit his chances. So I feel like I agree. I'm not fully sold on Cess quite yet. I love him and I love having him at the club, but he's not really looking like our fill-in left back, and I don't think he's going to get a huge number of opportunities on the wing either. So I'd say a bit of an impact sub maybe late in the season to throw an extra man on up front, and he knows how to get into the right position around the goal as well. We saw that many times while he was at Fulham. And I feel like you almost don't lose that, even if you haven't played for a long time. His ability to be in the right place at the right time is instinct more than anything. So I'm hopeful that we can get something out of him. But I agree, at the moment, it does feel like he's potentially a bit of a liability. If we did have an injury to Robinson, I think we'd maybe be in a little bit of trouble. But we talked a little bit about the Jimenez goal already, but Skibby, the Stansfield goal, it came from an Anderson through ball, which is, the kind of thing we've been, even Tosin, who was very good at his long balls, wasn't delivering that kind of quality. A ball over the top, finding Stansfield, a really good touch from Stansfield. And he looked a little bit awkward at first, but ended up making a good finish of it. Is that the kind of thing that we've missed so far this season? Those kind of balls that Diop and Bassi just aren't capable of actually playing?
100%. Like, we saw it when Anderson was with us the first time. I've seen it when he's been at Palace, and we saw it yesterday. He disguises it so well. Because if you watch the goal back sort of from almost like with Stansfield in shot, you can see that the right back is sort of standing on Stansfield, and then, Joa gets the ball out of his feet, and then he starts to think that, Sessegnon's a threat. So he starts to drag out, and then, Stansfield's realised, looked over his shoulder and gone, right, I'm gone. And I think if you listen to Stansfield post-match interview, he says that, a couple of minutes before, Joa was saying, keep making those runs because I'm going to find you. And I think he made 7 out of 8 long passes completed for Joa yesterday. So it's clearly something which is a key part of his game. It's something which, the reason why we brought him in for sure. For me, it's very exciting to think that, we've never really had that option recently of running in behind. Now we're starting to use Adama, Iwobi. I think even Smith Rowe's got it in his locker to sort of get in behind. So to have someone, that kind of quarterback, centre back, who's now ready to sort of pick out your runs, it's very exciting. It's a great asset to have, and it only took us 10 minutes for Joa to pick that out, and it's exactly why we paid the money for such a player.
The only thing I would say on that goal, though, is obviously everything you've said about Anderson's bang on. By the way, that was, it was a fantastic ball, and it wasn't the only one in the game that he played. And Jay had to show the intent to get behind, compose himself and finish. But my God, that was some terrible defending. I watched it back just before we went on air, and Jay's come from the left wing, and the right back just watches him drift in, makes no effort to get back, the centre back manages to get back, but then when Jay cuts inside, makes no effort to get goal side, so he just shows him the whole goal to aim at. So thankfully, we were playing a team that allowed that to happen. We won't get, I could expect the Premier League, it would be the players to get back and make sure that doesn't happen. But we can only take what we can out of it, and it was great movement from Stanfield and a great ball by Anderson.
I think one of the interesting things as well is now that Pereira is playing a little bit deeper, and this is skipping forward to a potential starting lineup against Ipswich, but now that Pereira is playing a little bit deeper and we have players like Anderson who can play those long balls, it does create a lot more space for someone like Pereira to sit deep and actually receive, because defenders are going to be watching for those long balls from Anderson. You got players like Iwobi, Smith Rowe, Adama all bombing on, and the defense is going to have to follow them. They're not going to be able to hold a line for the whole game. So they're going to have to follow those runs. And all of a sudden, the whole game gets stretched because we have players with that ability. And I would love to see Lukic, Pereira, Sander Berge at some point as well, having that space in the middle that's been created by having players with that ability. Because I just think if you give the ball to them deep, we're going to be able to create a lot more chances, and it's just going to stretch games a little bit more. And I think we've missed that, at least in the first couple of games of the season so far. But even with Tosin, whose passing was okay, but he was, very error prone, I would say, is putting it lightly, and tried to play too many clinical passes that were just never there in the first place. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Anderson slots into that lineup, and even like you've said, Skibby, maybe Cuenca sitting alongside Anderson really opens up the way Fulham play going forward. Let's move on. Actually, before I do, I'll ask each of you very quickly, dream draw for the third round?
Not Man City. I think that's probably my dream.
Look,
anyone in particular?
I'm not too sure. I just want. We're going to keep doing what we've done last night, aren't we? We're going to keep giving the second team an opportunity to develop. I don't think it's too early to be using some of the more first team players in these games just to try and get through when we know that we can use them off the bench effectively like we did yesterday. So I want a team that enables us to be able to do that and still win the game. So that would be a lower league team, I would think, would be an ideal draw for the next round for me.
QPR at home?
Yeah, fine. That'd be great. Yeah. QPR, perfect.
QPR, they beat Luton last night on penalties, but even, be lovely to pick up like a Walsall or a Fleetwood Town in the next round. Blackpool sitting in League One as well. There's definitely some good options there in terms of draw for the next round. You obviously just want to avoid the big boys and hope they all get drawn against each other to give us an easy run through to hopefully the final this year, and we go one better. Guys, let's look ahead to the weekend. Fulham taking on Ipswich. Back-to-back promoted teams, which I don't think we've had in... Actually, no, we had last season, didn't we, with Burnley and Sheffield back-to-back, I think it was. But a really good chance for us to pick up 6 points from the first three games. I think it's kind of expected for us to have those 2 wins in the bag after those first 2. But Dave, what you've seen from Ipswich so far, they've obviously had a pretty rough start to the league, to life in the Premier League, playing Liverpool on the opening weekend and then having to back it up against Man City. What have you seen from Ipswich that makes you think that maybe they're a chance of staying up this season, or do you think it's going to be a real struggle for them?
It's too early, and I can't judge them on those 2 games. They're hard games for anyone. So I think their season starts on Saturday, and I think really that's the test for them to see how they can perform against us, a mid-table team in their own backyard. Can they get points off us? And I think that's when we'll see what they're all about, really. They have had moments, haven't they, in the first couple of games? They took the lead on against Man City. But, look, it's really hard to defend against, fantastic sides against that and keep them out. Liverpool's game wasn't quite as dominant as the Man City game. So shows that maybe they're harder to beat at home, but we'll see. My kind of hope is that because that they're pinning all their hopes on this game and getting 3 points in it, and maybe take us a little bit for granted. Maybe think that by attacking us and leaving gaps early, we might be able to exploit some of those. But we'll see. We're going to have to defend well at times for sure.
Look, they've made a couple of good signings as well. Well, potentially good signings. Calvin Phillips joining them on loan from Man City. Sami Smodic from Blackburn as well, a striker that, well, both players are players that Fulham were linked with over the last couple of years. Skibby, how do you feel their squad depth is sort of set up? I know there might be a few moves before the end of the window, but do you think they've made some good signings in the off-season?
In my heart, I say they've made some good signings. It's completely opposite to Fulham's strategy. We want Premier League quality, that kind of... Premier League quality is the wrong word. Premier League experience, I think, is the correct term. But, whereas they've gone to the Championship, and I am an absolute advocate of the talent in the Championship. I mean, you look at people like Jared Bowen, who have just completely kicked on. And I look at the names that they've signed. So there is actually a lot here that I would have liked Fulham to have a look at. So Jack Clark's just come in, I believe, from Sunderland. I think he's a great player. You mentioned, Calvin Phillips from Man City. Had an absolute torrid time at West Ham, but I think he's 100% a confidence player. And Kieran McKenna, for me, is a manager who I feel will get, the best out of him, because he is going to make him his star man, and he's going to want him to perform every week. And I think that's what he needs. Sami Smodic, Liam Delap from Man City's under-21s, Amari Hutchinson from Chelsea, sort of youth setup. And Jacob Greaves actually is one that I really rate as well as a centre-back. He was someone I was kind of looking for us to, when we were looking at a right-sided centre-back. But it's certain players which I think on paper you would love, but can they bring it together and become that team that beats relegation? It's so many unknowns, especially around sort of Amari Hutchinson, Liam Delap, those sort of players who are... They've got a lot of, talk about them. I remember Delap was scoring for fun for Man City's under-21. So, there is some skill there, but are they going to be the ones that can keep them from being relegated? It's too much to say. I know they're looking at Broja as well. I think there's been some problems with an injury he's picked up that's just now changed the terms of the deal, but I think they're still trying to do it. They're looking at, I think, Nketiah potentially as a backup option. I know he might be going to Palace, but I know Ipswich have sort of started to have some talks in the last sort of couple of hours. I want to say they can do it. I want to say that they're bringing together a decent team, but for me, the more that I look at those purchases that they've made, it kind of looks like we're building something with a young team, which even if they do get relegated, can bounce straight back up again. So it's almost like a preparing for the Championship again. But I think with a team of underdogs under Kieran McKenna, that is literally what Ipswich is all about. So I'm not going to write them off. I think they're going to give us a hell of a game, to be honest, because like Dave said, quite rightly, their season starts now. You write off Man City, you write off Liverpool. As the season goes on, I think I've mentioned this before, these sort of teams that get promoted, they potentially get chipped away at with their confidence, loss after loss, and start to fall away. But, they've played two teams they didn't expect to get anything from. They're now playing Fulham. It is the worst time to play them, in my opinion. It's their first real home game to get something out of. They're going to give us a hell of a game, and it's not going to be a walk in the park for us, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's interesting when you're talking about the signings. It feels very much like almost like a football manager style, promoted to the Premier League. Let's sign all these players that there's a bit of buzz around. Amari Hutchinson, good loan spells. Jack Clark, Sami Smodic scored a heap of goals in the Championship. All the signings make sense. Maybe fractionally risky in the fact that they're not proven Premier League players. They potentially have the ability to become proven Premier League players, and definitely a very, very good Championship side as well, which I think is what Luton were looking at doing last season, where they definitely built a side that I think they expected to be relegated, and they were building a side that would easily jump straight back up again. So, yeah, I think, like you said, it's one to be slightly worried about because their season does start this weekend. Those first two games, they would not have been expecting anything, and a point out of those first two games would be, insane. And I think people would be very worried about Ipswich at that point. So, this is their chance to actually make their mark on the Premier League and give the other teams around them that are fighting against relegation an idea of what to expect from Ipswich. And so, it's not going to be a walk in the park by any means. I do think Fulham are looking better than they looked last season and have more potential. So I think we should hopefully have enough to get past Ipswich, but it's not going to be an easy game by any means. Let's have a quick look at Fulham's recent form. Obviously, the win against Leicester 2-1, the loss against Man United on the opening day, and the friendlies. But looking at Ipswich's recent form, and as we said, you can't take into account too much those opening games, but one thing I notice here especially, I'll go back through the friendlies before the season started. They played Nice in their last friendly, drew 0-0, beat Hoffenheim 1-0, and lost 2-1 to Fortuna Düsseldorf. Big thing there, 3 goals scored in their last 5 games. Nice, Hoffenheim, and Fortuna Düsseldorf, I'd assume, are what you'd expect from mid-table Premier League sides. And it seems Ipswich are struggling for goals at the moment. Dave, do you think that's going to be their biggest issue this season, or do you think potentially, their maybe inexperienced defence coming up against Premier League strikers is more of a worry?
Oh, both. Anyone that comes up from the Championship, you've got to find a way of scoring goals in the Premier League, and it's really difficult. It's really difficult. Yeah, clearly, I think Ipswich, Leicester, and who else came up? I've forgotten now. But they're all going to find Southampton. But they're all going to find that difficult. And yeah, they've got to step up at the back as well, because when you're not scoring, you've got to try and keep them out. So I think both are going to be tested. Whether they're good enough going forward, whether they can keep teams out at the back. Clearly, they are conceding goals, albeit against two of the best sides in the league. And, I think that's why I'm thinking, the first goal is going to be really important again on Saturday. If we get it, heads could drop. We could silence the crowd. And I think that would be a really great way to get a result. If we concede, then the crowd, are jumping around, it could be a difficult day for us.
Mm. Let's talk about the potential lineup for this game. Let's talk Fulham and Skibby. We obviously saw Fulham go into the game against Leicester with an unchanged 11 from the Man United game and another very good performance as well. Do you expect Silva to make any changes before Ipswich? Obviously, there's some signings to come, but let's be perfectly honest, he's not going to throw anyone in the deep end,
No.
maybe put them on the bench. But do you think after the win against Birmingham, Silva might be changing his mind at all about throwing some players straight into the starting lineup?
I don't think so. I don't think it's Marco's way. I think the only one I can see happening is Anderson for Diop. It's just too obvious to mention that, we definitely struggle in that build-up play that we mentioned, that, Anderson for Diop is just a no-brainer. But I don't see him changing anything else. I don't see Sander Berg coming in just because he hasn't had a pre-season. Looked a bit, he was blowing after about sort of 50 minutes yesterday. So I think Marco even said in his interview that he said the plan was to give him 60 minutes and see how he gets on. I think it'll be unchanged apart from Anderson for Diop. The interesting one for me will be Emil Smith-Rowe. I think he went maybe a bit harsh, but he went missing a little bit in the second half against Leicester. I think he is struggling for fitness. So I think he'll definitely start, but I don't think you'd see him past the hour mark. So we may see sort of Sander Berg come on, pushing Pereira further up the field. But yeah, I think for me, it's just the Marco way that he likes to keep everything the same, unchanged, and only make changes when he has to. And I think for me, Anderson and Diop is a must.
And Dave, I guess same question to you as well. And more, I think Anderson's probably the one that stands out. But Do you think we're likely to see some additional players or different players on the bench now? Obviously, Anderson and Sander Berge didn't make the bench in the last game. Do you think we're likely to see different players be subbed on by Marco in this game?
Yeah, I mean, to start with, I agree with Skibby. I think the only potential change is Anderson for Diop, and I personally would support that just because I think it would help our build-up play. It's a bit harsh on Diop, who's played quite well, but the reality is,
Yeah.
it feels like the best thing to do for the team, and therefore we should be brave enough to make that decision, and not just wait for Diop to kind of make a mistake that allows Anderson to get in, if you know what I mean. So I agree with the starting 11. In terms of the bench, then I think there will be some changes. If Anderson and Berger are coming into the squad, then there's going to be some players drop out. Diop may be the one that misses out, unfortunately. He was actually one of the players that was left out a lot at the back end of last year when Ream was on the bench and Tosin and Bassi started. So Diop may go from being a starting centre back to out of the squad, and unfortunately that's just the way it is because we've got so much quality in that department. Berger, I could see him coming in. I think for Harrison Reed, I actually thought Harrison Reed, when he came on against Leicester, he was busy, and his headless chicken act kind of worked quite well against tired legs. But last night he had a poor game, and I think he might be the one that's sacrificed for Berger. In terms of coming off the bench, then to be honest, I think Rao's had so little impact in the last two games and was so disappointing last night that for me, Stansfield should be ahead of him. If Mooney's is going to be given a rest at 70 minutes, and I'd much rather see Stansfield come on in his place. Either way, I think Stansfield might get a run out, and whether he comes on the wing or up front, I could see him certainly be used a bit more now that he's starting to prove himself. But other than that, I'm not foreseeing a lot, of revolutionary change on what we've seen already.
In terms of the squad, I'll throw it straight back to you as well, Dave. We saw good performances from Stansfield. We saw a few flashes from Josh King as well, but he's obviously got some potential there. With those two youth players now sort of proving themselves sort of step by step, bit by bit, do you think maybe this is the time when players like Harrison Reed and maybe Harry Wilson as well actually take a bit more of a step back out of the squad and just become general squad players, that sort of, 21, 22, 23, 24 number squad player effectively. And maybe Marco has a bit more confidence to play Stansfield and Josh King going forward?
I think with Stansfield, I think he's ahead of Josh King in Marco's plans. And I think that, he's one that is knocking on the door to, get more opportunities off the bench. And you never know. We could be here in a couple of months' time and Stansfield's firmly part of our starting 11 because he's taken this chance and he's, stepped up with goals, which would be amazing. But King, I think, is a little further behind. He's only 17. He's a fantastic talent. But I just don't think he's ready for Premier League. I just don't think he's physically ready for Premier League football. So I think he might actually stick around, be part of the under-23 games, be part of the cup games, but I'm not expecting to see him in the Premier League squad. Wilson and Reed, I think, they're probably trusted players for Marco and will have a position on the bench in the squad. But I think long-term, perhaps we'll be thinking that, their time at Fulham, maybe beyond this season, it might be coming to an end. So we'll see.
Skibby, do you reckon there's the potential for a few loans to come before the end of the window as well? I mean, if Silva isn't fully sold on Stansfield as a member of the squad, would it be better for him to go out to the Championship for the season? And additionally, players like Luke de Fougerols, who hasn't featured at all so far, I think Josh King's potentially too young to go out on loan, or if he does, it would be very low down, maybe in National League kind of stuff. But do you feel like it would be better to give those players loans in the Championship and get them game time and proper experience and have them coming off the bench for that sort of last 5 minutes every now and then?
De Fougerols, definitely. Like you say, he hasn't been involved at all. he's clearly been given sort of indications that, a loan out is probably going to be best for him. Martial Godot, the same. I think he needs a loan. I think he needs a championship loan. Did really well at Wigan. Wigan fans loved him. I can't see Stansfield going out, personally. I think he's done enough. And I can see if there's only one attacking player that makes the bench, it's probably going to be Stansfield over Jimenez at the moment, just because of how he's playing. But that being said, I can see loans coming in, if I'm honest, because let's be honest, TK loves a deal. So, the moment I love about the transfer window is obviously deadline day, because players you'd never even dream of suddenly become available. I mean, I know Raheem Sterling is still about. He's been told by Chelsea, no chance you're going to play. So he's going to be like a last minute loan to somewhere, I think. If we can pull that off, because certain things didn't fall our way, that'd be fantastic. But unfortunately, what you have to sort of think about in those sort of situations is, yes, we're going to bring in Sterling, increase his value and allow Chelsea to cash in on him, and as a result, Stansfield potentially doesn't get as much game time as Marco envisioned at the start of the month. But when these absolute stars become available, you'd be silly not to, because that could be his goals and his performances could be the difference of Europa Conference League and pushing for the actual Europa League. There's possibilities here which I can't even imagine at this point, but we'll see who becomes available. But at the moment, and it's always changing in football, as of the 28th of August, Stansfield is in our plans and won't be loaned out. I can see Defugeroles and Godot going out on loan. Piazziti probably as well. He started off being involved, but not so much at the moment. But if he was going to be involved, he probably would have taken Josh King's role in the squad yesterday against Birmingham, but didn't. So I could see him going out. But personally, I can see a potential goalkeeper loan coming in, and an absolute random, could be attacker, could be anything really, could be even a left back at this point. But we wait and see. Get a deal sheet in at 5 past midnight or whatever it is, 5 past 11.
It's interesting you say that, because Silva has come out and said he wants to bring in another attacking player, and that obviously would push Stansfield down the pecking order slightly. And at that point, if you are behind Adama, Wilson, Iwobi, Smith Rowe, new player, all of a sudden your third choice on a wing, it puts him in a tough position. And for him personally, I think he needs to probably be pushing for a loan deal if he does fall down that pecking order. It's hard to say what will happen. Like you said, Fulham might be wanting to lock in Ryan Cherky, and we find ourselves able to pick up Sterling somehow as well. And all of a sudden, Stansfield is just never getting a game, realistically. And
it's interesting you say that, Jack. Sorry to cut in, because Silva actually said in the game after last night's game that he doesn't just see Stansfield as a winger. He also sees him can play as a number 9 or in the 10. Yeah. So, and given Raul's performances, I'd almost say he's number 2 striker. And if we only bring in a winger, he's ahead in that department. So I think I wouldn't pigeonhole him as a left winger. I think that is more to his game, and I think that he can play anywhere really around the front, and I think that's how Silva sees him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And as Jim says on our live stream as well, he's probably in front of Wilson at this stage. Wilson's probably got the experience over him and the CV to back it up. But I'd agree in terms of current form, Stansfield feels like he should be a lot higher up that list. And I think that's a good point, that he probably sits as our backup striker at the moment, and being able to play against Birmingham and actually scoring a goal and proving that he can put the ball in the back of the net would do him wonders for his standing within the squad. Let's jump forward, guys, and I will talk about my top tip for the weekend. It's a pretty simple one, going pretty safe this time. Fulham to win and under 2.5 goals. That's just over 5-1 for the odds there. I can see this being a tight game. I don't see it being any more than 1-0, maybe 2-0. I don't think the floodgates are going to open like they did against Man City for Ipswich. I also can't see Ipswich actually scoring against us based on their issues up front. So, Dave, your eyebrows are almost flying off the top of your head there.
It's
Your
just very
thoughts?
positive, and I like hearing it, but it's I just feel a bit uncomfortable with it because they're certainly they're gonna cause us problems, as Skibby said earlier in the pod. So I just but look, keep going. I like hearing the positive. It makes me feel better.
Skivvy, your thoughts?
I've got a weird vision for this game, which is
Uh-oh.
there's going to be goals. It's going to be kind of flashbacks to kind of Luton end of the last season, which was, I think Fulham will win 3-2. I think
3-2.
Ipswich are going to give it a good go, but I think that's going to leave them exposed. And we've got the experience to really kick on. And I know it's been said on this pod week in, week out, but this is the week for Muniz. I think he's going to kick on. I've actually got him down as a hat-trick, scoring a hat-trick this weekend. I think it was random Fulham facts said that we've had X amount of hat-tricks in the Premier League, and I said, 11th because, Muniz scores a hat-trick against Ipswich. I'm from the future, so I can see that happening. So there you go. That's my tip.
Well, I'll update the risky tip later in the week for a Muniz hat-trick and a 3-2 victory to Fulham. Look, it's very possible. I think you're right. This game has the potential to be open, and as soon as you said you see goals, I immediately thought back to Luton, which was just bonkers, effectively, absolute chaos. So it's very possible. It just depends on how important Ipswich think conceding is to them. If they back themselves to score a goal, by just keeping Fulham out and shutting Fulham out, then I think maybe it's going to be a low-scoring game, and I don't think Ipswich will cause us too many issues going forward. But I think if Ipswich decide to bomb forward and try and really overload us and score goals against us, it could very much stretch the game and open it right up, and there will be goals at that point. I'm certain of it. Let's go for actual predictions. Dave, what's your prediction for this game?
My head says it could be a score draw, maybe a 2-2 draw. As I said, I think they're just going to create a lot of opportunities and test us. But the gaps they leave at the back will give us opportunities too. My heart says 3-0, that we can make the most of opportunities on the break and dishearten them, and then take the game away from them in the second half. So I don't know what to trust, my head or my heart.
And Skibby, you're sticking with your 3-2, as Steve says on the live stream, might be on the herbal teas.
I promise this is only squash. So, but 3-2 for me. A 3-2 win. Muniz hat-trick.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think we're going to sneak a 2-0 victory here. I think it's going to be tight. We will score just before half-time. They'll come out flying in the second half, but we will nick a goal sort of 20 minutes to go, and the game will comfortably be seen out because we'll bring on Sander Berger and a bunch of other players to try and shore things up late on. Either way, it's going to be an exciting and interesting game because both teams have a lot to play for here. Fulham pick up 6 points from their first 3 games. I don't know how that would rate in terms of our starts over the last few years, but it sets up a really good platform for the following games after that to be able to build on, because you pick up a couple more wins and all of a sudden picked up 10 points inside the first 5 games, and things start to look not comfortable as such, but you put yourself in a really good position for the rest of the season. Before we finish, guys, I just want to touch on Fulham Women's, who played their second game of the season. They won their first game 6-0. They decided that wasn't enough, so went and won 7-0 on the weekend against Millwall Lionesses. A brace from Sophie Manzi and a brace from Maddie Parsonson, who are in goal-scoring form so far this season. Goals from Tagliavini, Heisman, and Taylor Makepeace as well. Another really good performance, and this side's really clicking early doors. Sitting top of the table, 13 goals, none conceded to start the season. Big things ahead for this Fulham women's team, and let's just quickly talk about the kit. How good is AEW as a shirt sponsor?
they're missing a trick by not selling it, because I would buy that rather than the men's team, and it would give revenue to the Fulham women. So it's a win-win. I mean, it's a fantastic kit. I think if we had that, if they went through the Premier League ranking order, I think that would put our kit to easily the top 3. It's such a nice kit.
It's as iconic or getting up there for Pizza Hut as a shirt sponsor, and it just looks clean on that shirt. Dave, I know you love the black and red shirt. Would AEW maybe tip you over the edge?
My only worry with that is it another stick to beat us with, you know, the Michael Jackson statue and now a wrestling sponsor on the front of our kit. I don't know, but yeah, it definitely looks better than our gambling sponsor, and the fact that it isn't a gambling sponsor gets my vote anyway. So yeah, I'm all for it if they want to sell it.
You had such a good opportunity there to say, give them a steel chair to beat us with, Dave, and you just missed it.
Yeah,
guys, I think we can probably wrap it up there. Like we said, really exciting game coming up this weekend, and a really good victory against Birmingham in the Carabao Cup. It's always a little tricky, those ties, and we've seen Fulham slip up in them many times before, let's be perfectly honest. So good to see us actually get through fairly unscathed, no injuries, which is always nice to see, and into the third round. Guys, as always, thanks to everyone who joined us on the live stream tonight. Thank you to everyone who continues to download the podcast. Please do make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us a rating on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts and on any other podcast apps that you find us on. It does help other Fulham fans find the podcast. Please do continue to share all of our stuff on Twitter and everywhere else you see it as well. We really appreciate all the support. Dave, thank you very much for joining today.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, 2 wins. Let's make it 3 wins at the weekend, and we'll all be really happy with August, won't we? So, and also, of course, we've got a few more days of the transfer window. So, looking forward to seeing who this winger is that we bring in. That's quite exciting and a good way to end the window.
Agree. It's very weird to not be sort of worried about the end of the window and thinking we need to sign 4, 5, 6 players to be in a half decent position, and now we're sort of going, yeah, 1 player would be quite nice. It's almost like surprise me, see what happens. Yeah. Skibby, thanks for joining today.
No, thank you for having me. Enjoyed it, and safe travels to everyone going up to Ipswich. Enjoy it, and if you need any parking tips, go into the Discord and message me, because I've got some insider stuff. So there you go.
You can only get it on the Discord. How good.
Absolutely.
It's a real shame there won't be any £1 beers this week at Portman Road, but I'm sure people will still fork out to have a good day out. So thank you again to everyone. And as always, come on, you Whites.